we're able to get at the questions and the answers that the researchers and scientists and drug developers need to more quickly move their therapies forward. And so, it's real tangible value, I think, when you put patients and scientists and drug developers together and they can interface in a way like this.
Hello, and welcome to the Bloodstream Podcast, the leading bleeding disorders podcast brought to you by Bloodstream Media and made possible by our presenting sponsor, Takeda, bleedingdisorders.com to learn more. I am your patient advocate and host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your healthcare advocate, nonprofit nerd, and other host, Amy Board, reminding you to please speak with a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
And we are coming to you live from the Believe Limited headquarters in sunny and hot. It is hot.
It is absolutely
hot. Los Angeles, California.
Sweltering.
That's a good word.
It's so hot. It's hotter in Denver than it is in LA, and it's hot in LA.
Denver may have the most confusing weather patterns of the entire country.
It's insane.
So
it's always a journey.
It's always a journey in Denver. That's something. But I do have to say, I had a very traumatizing lunch experience earlier today.
I was there.
You were, and I need to process that with you here live. But just after the introduction, it's just really preoccupying me. So I have to talk about it now. Maybe it has to do with the heat.
Okay, great.
Hint.
Great.
But anyway, later in the show, I will be joined by Kyle and Sean from the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. You'll hear that interview, and then Amy and I will react to it.
We got lots of reactions planned.
Lots of reactions. We'll also share the latest Let's Talk Mental Health segment, led by Haunting Season's Joshua Sterling Bragg and made possible by Sanofi Genzyme.
Thank you, Josh and Sanofi.
And thank you all for listening and watching, for those joining us live on Facebook. And did you know that you can support the Bloodstream podcast simply by subscribing to Bloodstream wherever you get your podcasts, or by leaving us reviews in the Apple Store or on Spotify, or by sharing our content on social media, or by telling someone about us? In fact, you can do all of those things. And please do rate, review, subscribe, and share the Bloodstream podcast today. And listeners, I'd like to remind you that the Bloodstream podcast is indeed made possible by our presenting sponsor, Takeda.
Takeda!
Yes, that's right. Takeda. Takeda, they got this website, bleedingdisorders.com, where you can learn all about Takeda's resources for and commitment to the bleeding disorders community. Takeda believes in a world free of bleeds. I'm for it, and are dedicated more than ever in their efforts to offer a wide range of programs and support to help patients throughout their treatment journey. Wherever on that journey they may be, you can learn more by simply visiting bleedingdisorders.com. One more time. That's bleedingdisorders.com. And for their founding and ongoing support of the Bloodstream podcast, I would just like to say, thanks, Takeda.
Thanks, Takeda. And listeners, I would like to remind you that there is still time to sign up for Believe Limited's first ever Big Bloody Talent Show taking place this summer.
This one, not next one.
All talent, all acts, all community members, I should say all ages.
All everythings.
Don't get an idea that this is just for teenagers. This is like legitimately adult talents.
100% it is.
Maybe children's talents, maybe infant talents.
You can involve a pet.
A pet? Like there's no species?
No species restrictions.
Oh my gosh.
None whatsoever. They just have to hit the time limit.
You have to sign up and it's like a whole thing. So please check out all of our links and all the things. I will screw it up if I say it here because it's not in my notes where I can get to it easy. But please sign up for the Big Bloody Talent Show. It's going to be awesome.
Program notes. Links in the program notes. That's all she had to say.
It's cool. I've been doing this job for 2 years. And when you're finished with us over here at Bloodstream, there's a new episode of Flow, which I happen to think is a very good episode of Flow. Once again, Christy and Jess are joined by Dr. Melissa Holmes from Girlology, who tackles the question, what are hormones and what do hormones do in the body? And I'll be honest with you, I was the one that asked for this episode because hormones baffle me and they rule my life.
Well, that's intense. Did you learn something?
I did. And I actually asked a couple questions that I wasn't supposed to ask.
You just perked up. If you could see it on the live stream. You just perked up. I asked a couple questions.
I did. I'm not supposed to, I'm not on that show.
No, you're
obviously.
on this show, Amy.
I know I'm on this show, but I produced that show. So I'm usually the silent, recorder in the back. I do technical stuff.
Oh. Another moment of you're really proud today.
I'm just saying. But anyway, I 100% clicked that unmute. And I was like, there was a lull in the conversation. I was like, hey, I got a question.
Nice. Just jumping right in there. I'll be honest. I would have asked the same questions.
Okay, great.
I don't know what hormones are. Like, I kind of know. You know what I mean? But,
You know
like,
what?
I don't know what hormones
And you know
are.
what? I don't even know about dude hormones. Like, I don't know about lady hormones, but I have no idea what your situation is.
Maybe we should bring someone on this podcast to talk about it. All right. Well,
it's great. Check out episode of Flow.
sounds like someone needs to do that. That someone's me. And as we just mentioned, you'll find links to Flow, the Big Bloody Talent Show, and anything else that we might speak about here today. In the program notes, click the bit.ly/allbloodstreamstuff hyperlink. Again, that's bit.ly/allbloodstreamstuff. And as always, if you've got a topic that you'd like to hear Amy and I discuss, have an expert that you are dying to hear from, or if you want to inquire about casting opportunities with Bloodstream Media and Believe Limited, connect with Bloodstream on social media or email mailbag@bloodstreammedia.com. And this is where there would be a transitional sound effect if it wasn't the live recording.
So maybe we should make one. Okay, so we can't just skip by this traumatizing lunch situation.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was there, and it's great. If he wasn't going to bring it up, I would have made him bring it up. It was, okay.
A few years ago in India, I had a meal that up until that point was the most challenging meal I'd ever had to consume in my life. I made the mistake of emphasizing to my server in Mumbai that I would like the pad thai, quick pause, ordering Thai food in India, just put that together.
I've heard this story.
That I would like it as spicy as possible. And when he looked at me like, you heard what you said? As spicy as possible? I said, that's right, sir. As spicy as possible. And he said, okay. And then came back. And then I proceeded to have a few bites of lunch, but mostly visit the bathroom over and over and over again because everything was emptying out of my face. My eyes, my nose, I feel like my ears were omitting something. That was topped by earlier, like 5 hours ago. I've known that Howl and Raise, and this is not, they don't sponsor the podcast, and I don't even know if this is supportive of them.
Right.
But I've known that their name's Howl.
Okay, Howl and Raise is a staple hot chicken place here in Los Angeles.
Correct.
When I first came to work for Believe and moved to Los Angeles, it was we had a staff lunch the only reason why we had a staff lunch was to introduce me to Howlin' Race. And at the time, pre-pandemic, you couldn't have it delivered. You had to send someone to stand in line. You couldn't pre-order. You had to stand in line. It's around the block. It's a huge deal. And it's an incredible sandwich, but they have, classic hot sandwich. They have like a menu of hotness of the chicken.
Okay, so I like hot. I like chicken sandwiches. I like hot, spicy stuff.
Right.
I was like, great, I'm doing Howl and Raise. By the way, I tried 3 times in the last 2 weeks to get from Howl and Raise.
That's the other part.
Previous 2 were completely unsuccessful. Today,
so he's tried 3 times this week to get Howl and Raise.
I ordered it at 9:30 in the morning just to be safe. And I got Natalie a sandwich. And I didn't even get her a different level of hot because I figured I don't want jealousy being a thing here. We both like hot stuff. So I ordered.
He also picked it up from the delivery man during a very important client call, which made me laugh.
That's true.
On the phone with the client, like very professional, making sure that he got his Howl and Raise.
But that delivery guy was a pro too because he could see what was happening and wasn't trying to have a conversation with me. He's like, let's do this quick handoff. You're just
simple transaction.
Toggling a mute button right now. I'm with you. And so that guy, I was really digging him for our 2-second interaction. Howlin' is the hottest of the hot temperatures that you can order the lunch sandwich at.
Sure.
I went with 2 Howlin' sandwiches. Again, one for me and one for my lovely wife. Amy, I'm not kidding. I had 2 bites. And then I suffered quietly at my desk. My eyes were watering. My mouth was just producing. It wasn't even like I don't know what it was. It wasn't blood. It wasn't saliva. A new liquid was created in response to this sandwich and emerged from my mouth. I was sweating. I still feel it in my chest. I'm not over it. This was literally 5 hours ago. I probably still, look, I got their things right here. They gave me these. I should have known when I saw these.
What is that?
Oh, actually, I have more.
What is that?
Napkins. And here's the other thing they do. They give you gloves.
They give you gloves.
So I saw these and I went, oh, gloves, and just threw them aside because that wasn't the food I wanted. In hindsight, this is a warning.
Oh my God.
I didn't get it at all. I just figured, oh yeah, you always get chicken sandwiches with gloves. Right. That's a normal thing that happens to people. So I had to go into the bathroom. I stopped by Amy's office. I stood in her doorway and I just cried. Literally, I was just crying. I couldn't do anything.
He had no color in his face. He was crying every this terrible orifice of his face was leaking.
It's true.
And then he just goes, this was so funny. He, in panic, he was like, I can't do anything. I can't do anything.
Completely true. I was paralyzed.
And it's horrifying that I laughed. I laughed immediately.
No,
like I
thank God you
wasn't
laughed.
sympathetic at all. Like I laughed. It was so funny. And I'm sorry, it was so terrible.
I was rubbing my tongue with paper towel like I was a cartoon character and like who had never had this experience before. I was like, I didn't know how to do it. I had water, Listerine, and coffee going.
I actually told him, I go, should you go stick your head under the faucet? Like, is that a thing?
And I thought about that too. I thought about all of it. It was so... That was a lot for me today. So yes, it's a hot day in sunny California, but my goodness, that has a different meaning for me here today. I'm still recovering. My mouth is still tingling. I still have some feeling like right here that's a little bit different.
Oh my God.
There's my diaphragm. There's something going on. So this is going to be, and I still have 2 sandwiches minus 2 bites to do with what I have no idea.
Like, I don't know how you're going to do that.
I don't know what to do with the sandwiches.
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't even want to give them to someone. I'd put them in the hospital.
Oh my gosh. What's the top tier of hotness that you do at Howlin' Ray's normally?
I don't, it's been years. Next time, mild, extra mild, like whiff it near me. I don't know. I can't.
So mild's the bottom rung, but Ryan said today,
like
which makes me laugh, that he's like, they shame you a little bit because like if you check mild, it's like a blue circle and everything else is like a shade of red. So they like legitimately shame,
but
which makes me laugh.
I'm glad they do that because if you mixed up Howlin' with whatever the blue is, most mild, you could cause a medical emergency. So, all right, we probably need to move on. I don't think that was intended to be quite that long. I'm sure Greg's loving the length of this segment, but it was just important to get that. I couldn't go anywhere without first somehow expunging that as best as I could. So Howlin' Ray's. I don't know what to do with you. I'll try again, I guess, eventually.
In Los Angeles, California. Don't miss it. Don't choose Howlin' unless you have a death sentence.
Oh my goodness.
Speaking of food items, I actually have a piece about a food item with statistics.
Oh, okay.
That I think it's important for us to share.
I love
I read a
statistics.
piece in the New York Times about coffee, and I think it will blow your mind.
Oh, well, my mind's a little blown already, especially
I
the
know.
food bev department, but
Great.
I'm ready because I love coffee.
Great.
And this is exciting.
Great. I learned something incredible, and I have statistics to prove it, so you're just going to have to let me do this.
Let's go, Bordeaux. You do it. I wouldn't
Okay.
stop you. Not
Okay.
like this.
Great. I'm so excited about it. So there was an article in the New York Times that says coffee.
That's a big newspaper.
Is a very big newspaper. That some people might be, no, but just stay with
They've
me.
been doing it for a long time.
I know. Coffee, apparently, has a litany of health benefits.
What?
And consuming coffee, and not just like a cup a day, we'll talk about like the amount of coffee, but consuming coffee has been linked to a reduced risk. This is crazy. Get this bulleted list.
Okay.
It has been linked to a reduced risk of all kinds of ailments, including Parkinson's disease, heart disease, type 2 diabetes,
Wow.
gallstones,
Ooh.
which is a thing,
Mhm.
depression, suicide,
Whoa.
cirrhosis, liver cancer, melanoma, and prostate cancer.
Coffee reduces the probability of these things?
Reduces it.
I'm doing great, Amy.
I know. And it's not just like a little, flimsy study. Get this. In fact, numerous studies conducted
Okay.
throughout the world, not
Big
just
place.
the United States, say that consuming 4 to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee a day
Easy. No problem.
has been associated with reduced death rates. In a study of more than 200,000 participants followed for up to 30 years who drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day.
Which, pause, what a commitment.
Right?
30 years of committing to 3 to 5 cups a day. I
Right?
applaud these people.
It's a gene therapy trial. Were 15% less likely to die early from all causes than people who shunned coffee.
I don't know what to do with that.
It's insane to me. And I'm psyched because I love coffee. It is a part of me. It's like
Yes.
the one thing, and I've thought about it, like, as we get older, we have to start thinking about the things that we're going to cut out.
Right. At
you
least
know.
we have to at least think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. We have to at least think about it. And coffee is the one thing that I don't think I'd be able to do. And I've
Same.
thought about it because like digestive stuff, and I just refuse to do it. I'm going to do everything that I can.
I think now it looks like you should continue. You should probably have more.
I'm going to have more 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day.
But what I don't understand though, I feel like my entire life, all I've heard is that drinking coffee, especially in excess, is going to
Yes.
cause ailments. It's going to cause
Yes.
problems, heart disease, stroke, reflux, these things, insomnia. Like
Yes.
it's only a cause of. So what happened? What's the deal? When did it change?
Well, there's a very fancy guy with, all the things that was quoted in this article. His name is Dr. Walter Willett. He is a professor of nutrition and
Epidemiology? Too many syllables in that one.
At Harvard School of Public Health. Anyway, and he says these periodic scares have given the public a very distorted view, and that overall, despite various concerns that have cropped up over the years, coffee is remarkably safe and has a number of important health benefits.
Remarkably safe, Dr. Willett said, huh?
Remarkably safe. Although this article does reaffirm that coffee will mess with your sleep, because that is legit and shouldn't be taken lightly, and I love my sleep.
Yeah, and that part is sometimes I'm like, how come I'm having trouble sleeping? And I remind myself of my coffee consumption.
Right.
So coffee naysayers, I'll give you that one. But I feel like I'm a little bothered, actually, because I feel like my entire life I was lied to. So I don't know, when did you start drinking coffee?
Great question. College with a bunch of sugar, and now I drink it black. That was my journey.
I drink it mostly black as well. I started when I was like 13, maybe 14, maybe 12. But my mom worked nights my whole life growing up. And so she'd wake up at like 4 in the afternoon, and my grandmother would like have a pot of coffee going. And 4:30-ish, with a 15-minute window around there is the time every day that like my mom, my grandmother would be in one spot. Things were chill. People were sitting down. People weren't sleeping or getting something ready. So as soon as I was like old enough to kind of sort of meander into the kitchen and be like, can I maybe try a cup of coffee? I did, you know? And so I started drinking it real young. And then I was into, like you, theater in college and stuff. So a lot of long days and late nights. And so a lot of coffee consumption. But I feel like all along this coffee journey that I've been on now for over 20 years, all I've heard about is how it's not good for me.
I know.
And I've never believed it. I've never in my bones believed it. I swear to God. So I've never believed it. There's, those things where it's like, we had something actually recently, not too long ago with Vivian, where like we thought maybe something was wrong with her. And I was like, I don't believe this. And then sure enough, we figured out, we have a faulty piece of equipment. And it was like, instinct is a real thing. It's informed by stuff. I have never actually believed that when I'm consuming my coffee, hey, product placement, Bloodstream mug, that I'm doing anything but enjoying a cup of coffee and it's good for me.
Yeah. I so connect it with the morning and like spiritual time, quiet time, writing time, and then the best, like the most relaxed conversational time. I've always enjoyed going out to breakfast and having a cup of coffee with my parents, and we that's like the best time of day for all of us to be at our most relaxed. I enjoy that with my partner as well. And so I don't know, coffee's important to me.
Yeah, it's got a cultural stand. Like it's more than just a beverage. So I'm really into this article. I love how big too that study. 200,000 people over 30 years. That's crazy.
I know. I'm going to tell you one more statistic that's going to transition into our mental health.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
What a pro.
I know. I didn't get like where you should go to get all the things like
you made up for
but
it,
I got this transition. So I guess I keep my job today. Perhaps the most dramatic of all the things in the coffee article was a 50% reduction in the risk of suicide among both men and women who are moderate coffee drinkers, perhaps by boosting production of brain chemicals that have antidepressant effects.
Wow. And it also like perhaps, right? So that suggests that, we don't, without digging into the details, it's suggestive there that we don't have enough research to support it, but there's something that's at least indicative that, maybe this is true.
It seems like common sense.
And it also feels like we just never know anything about anything.
I know.
We never know anything about it. We need more studies on everything.
It's really true. We really don't.
I know you're in this room next to me, and that's about the extent of it.
Which I love. But I love that about science, because science truly starts with, I don't know anything about this. Let's figure it out, which I think is great. I think is really great. So let's transition. Let's go to Let's Talk, which is great, which is one of my favorite things that we do here on Bloodstream. Today on Let's Talk segment, film cinematographer and segment host and one of my favorite people in the world, Joshua Bragg, is going to highlight some of the barriers that prevents people from coming forward and talking about anxiety, stress, and whatever might be going on with them, which is legitimate. I mean, I really think that this is legitimate, kind of developing that language and feeling comfortable to be able to share what's going on inside. Using stories from the Believe Limited film Let's Talk, along with his own personal experiences, Josh explores what barriers like these are in the first place and offers up some ideas of what we can do about them.
I feel like I'm still just having like things trickle that I don't know if it's like still happening or if I just re-traumatize myself a little bit. but I'm just going to have to keep going. Let's Talk is a partnership between Bloodstream Media and Sanofi Genzyme and aims to create an environment where we can have open and honest conversations about mental health in the bleeding disorders community. For people living with or caring for someone with a bleeding disorder, the impact on mental health is largely invisible and not often discussed. Let's Talk shares tips on how to care for your or someone you love's mental health and strives to eliminate the stigma associated with this discussion, especially within the bleeding disorders community. And now for the segment, over to Josh with Let's Talk.
How do I put into words anything at all? I've mentioned before I have social anxiety, and it's a really bizarre combination to pair that with hosting a Bloodstream segment and having my own podcast and YouTube show and TikTok presence. I have to put my thoughts into words every single day, and it gives me a lot of stress. I often feel imposter syndrome or fear that I'm going to slip up and say the wrong thing. And this is a low-stakes situation. I have editors and a team to help brainstorm and review my work. If I stress out about this, just imagine for a second how stressful it can be to actually talk to a professional. Like a doctor, for example, especially when I've had previous experiences with medical professionals that felt dismissive or pushy. Well, for me, I know there's one thing I can do that will help reduce the stress and make the entire interaction much more manageable. Let's talk.
You always go through stages, I guess, in life. When I was 18 years old and I had my daughter and my wife, I was young. I was kind of scared. At the time I was 18 and still involved in the gangs. I thought I was a hard ass. I thought I was tough. I never thought that something, could kind of soften me up in a way, make me feel good inside, give me some burst of hope in a way.
This is Ivan speaking from our film, Let's Talk Mental Health.
My dad was a macho, you could say. Felt like he ruled the house and everything had to be done his way. That's kind of the mentality I had growing up. I had to be tough, and that's why I guess the gang life was I felt like I wanted to be there. Felt tough, released that anger. We didn't really talk about our emotions at home. That's something very important. You need to be able to communicate with your children about their emotions and how to help them learn to express them and talk about them, right? It took me a while. It took me a little longer to kind of learn how to manage these issues and situations because I had to learn this all on my own. I didn't have guidance from my parents.
How we're raised can put a lot of friction on our ability to open up and talk as adults. If we don't develop the language as kids, if we don't grow up with a level of transparency and disclosure from our parents, it can make it truly, truly challenging to learn that valuable skill later in life. We often associate this reluctance to share with the straight male persona, and that can be true, but all genders and identities can come with their own barriers, and so do different cultures. Listen to Esther speak about this later in our film.
Culturally, being of Mexican descent, we hold a lot of things in. We don't speak of any issues because I don't even know how to say it in English exactly. We're chismosos. One person tells the story and it just snowballs into a bigger story. So if you can control the narrative by not saying anything, you don't give them anything to snowball into something great. I've even told my daughters, and now I realize that's my cultural baggage of me saying, don't tell all your friends. There's no reason to tell them. And I did tell them that when they were 10 and 11 years old. But I was taking away a little bit of their healing process. You reach out to friends and you tell them what's up because you need support. I took it away from them, but it was part of my baggage of we don't talk about those things. We just didn't grow up where you tell everybody your household problems. You just don't. And now we're sort of easing up on that and saying it's your story. And to my daughter saying, if you need to tell someone, or if you feel compelled to tell someone, you tell someone.
No matter how they appear or where they come from, these barriers are common for most of us. But how do we break through these barriers? How do we develop the language to share, to be open, to be vulnerable when we know we need to? It's not easy. And there's no real correct answer other than you have to work at it. But I can tell you what works for me. I write. I don't journal, which I know can be helpful for a lot of people, but for me personally, I write stories. I like being able to put a character I made up into a situation to see how they deal with it. I can write out any scenario I want. I can build confrontations. I can turn simple fears into monsters. I can even work out a worst-case scenario and kill off my character. And most importantly, I can erase it anytime I want and change the outcome. But Josh, I don't write like that. Well, that's okay. That's just how I do it. It's my language. But there are core values in there, I think, that are universally helpful when it comes to developing your own language. I see them as 3 main phases: exploring, planning, and repetition. Let's break them down a little bit further. Exploring for me is just sitting and thinking out a scenario, trying to see all the different ways it can plan out, every single one. And what I'm looking to get out of the exploring phase is to identify the outcome that I want so that I can set it as a solid goal. In the planning phase, I begin writing down ideas as they come to mind, collecting and organizing them in a way that helps guide me from my starting point, right here and now, all the way to my preferred conclusion. And the repetition phase is the process of writing the story for me. I go over and over my plan, my path to the conclusion, until I feel confident that I can get there with as few issues as possible. The process helps me protect myself against all the unwanted outcomes, preparing myself emotionally, planning possible pivots in my plan to get around obstacles that might get in my way, or simply being prepared with questions in case I'm up against an obstacle that I can't navigate on my own. No path is truly straight and narrow, and you can't plan for everything, and you won't always get exactly what you want. But by developing your language ahead of time through exploring, planning, and repetition, when it comes time to have the important conversation with a friend, a relative, or a doctor, you will be armed with all the right tools to help guide the conversation towards your preferred conclusion. And look, I'm no expert. I'm just a guy living with anxiety in an increasingly connected world, doing my best to do my best. I hope this helps. Thank you, Amy and Patrick, for having me on to talk and explore these topics. You can join me over the next few months as I work my way through our film and talk about the stuff that really pops, the important stuff, the tough stuff. And my promise to you is it'll never get too scary. If you want access to some incredible mental health resources, you want to explore the film on your own, or you just want to dig deeper yourself, please go check out letstalkmh.com and click resources. And I'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you, Josh, for that excellent segment. If you or someone that you know has experienced feelings that have impacted your mental health, talk to your healthcare provider and find educational resources at letstalkmh.com. Thank you, Sanofi Genzyme, for making Let's Talk possible. And Josh will be back next month for another Let's Talk segment. And with that, Amy Board, where do we go next?
Oh my gosh. I can't believe this is the first time that we're having these guys on the show.
Yeah, it is kind of like wow, it took a while, but
yeah. Sean and Kyle have a podcast called The Two Disabled Dudes, and I saw them years ago facilitate a keynote, I believe, at the Global Genes Summit in San Diego. They're wonderful.
Why?
They're wonderful. They're charismatic. They're disarming, and they speak about like substantive things in a really charming way that makes you think and laugh, and they have tons of compassion, and they're great. They're really wonderful. And so I can't believe you got to talk to them and I didn't, which is fine. It's fine. But I can't wait for our audience to get to know them more.
I think you were marked as optional on the calendar invite for that interview, Amy.
She
wasn't. I was just trying to make a joke.
On my calendar.
I thought she might go along with it, but it's not true. She just wasn't invited. Well, we'll probably talk to them again. It was the first time Kyle, Sean, and I ever spoke. So what you're about to hear is the first time we talked. We never talked off mic before. So that was kind of fun to like literally meet them, fellow, rare disease people and podcasters on a podcast interview in real time. That was
Yeah.
kind of fun. So yeah, let's play that interview, and then Amy and I will come back, do all that reacting we promised, and we'll go from there. So here they are, Kyle and Sean from the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Joined now by Sean Baumstark and Kyle A. Bryant, the creators and hosts of the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. It's a pleasure to have you guys on. Thanks for being with me here on Bloodstream today.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Sean, I was listening to the most recent episode at the time that we're recording this, titled Sean Hates the Gym, this morning.
Oh, yeah.
And I found it equal parts entertaining, informative, kind of frustrating, but also like in a motivating, activating way, which I think is good. So I think that makes for a good podcast. Congratulations. But man, wow, that's an experience.
I'll be honest, I didn't double check the title Kyle landed on, but I just want to clarify that I hate my gym, not just the gym in general, but I had some frustrating experiences with my gym recently.
Which you can hear all about on the episode. And like I said, it is equal parts entertaining and informative.
Half of our show is just us complaining about things, so it's kind of fun.
And how would you characterize the other half?
I would say the other half is very uplifting and empowering. You know, I think I point back to our tagline. It's life beyond circumstances, and that's kind of what our focus is, you know. Whether those circumstances are rare disease or financial troubles or whatever it is, focusing on our goals in life and what we want to accomplish and the good things in life rather than those things that drag us down.
That's all cute and warm and fuzzy, but I would have to say the other half is strictly because we have guests. If we didn't have guests, it would be just us complaining the entire time.
So was that the inspiration for the show? You guys met and were like, we love complaining together? Or what did inspire the show to first start? What, back in 2016 you started it? The end of 2016?
Yeah. So we were in this movie called The A-Taxon. We did a big bike race from San Diego to Memphis. And the filmmakers did an incredible job with the film. And we're really proud of it. And, you know, we're watching it and just going, you know what, there's principles in this film that we need to talk about on a regular basis. And it might make good content that other people might want to listen to also. So that's kind of the genesis of the podcast.
Had you guys met each other before the film, or was that what first linked you to one another?
Yeah, we met a few years before the bike race, and then of course the film came out years later, but we met when I was first diagnosed with FA. Way back when, we lived in the same city in Northern California, and after I was diagnosed, of course, went to Google and started doing a little bit of research and came across local news stories on Kyle and realized we're the same age, same city, and he had just done this big bike race or bike ride, and so he's all over the news. So I hunted him down, I don't know, through Facebook or something similar. I don't even know if Facebook was around back then, honestly, but anyway, I hunted him down and said, dude, you're my new best friend. What am I up against? And we met for a beer and a pizza. Couple days later or a couple weeks later, and from there we've just connected on a very similar mantra in life, and that's living beyond whatever challenge we're up against. And what's unfolded is almost 15 years of friendship now.
Sean, you started that mentioning that when you were diagnosed, that's what led you to find Kyle. Kyle, I'm wondering, maybe can you describe for our audience Friedreich's ataxia, or FA, as you heard Sean just refer to it. In a nutshell, what is FA?
Yeah, so it's a neuromuscular disease that affects all muscle coordination from the toes to the fingertips. And it also has symptoms such as diabetes, scoliosis, vision loss, hearing loss, and life-shortening heart complications. And so, you know, there's a wide spectrum of symptoms and a wide spectrum of the way it affects someone. just like a lot of other rare diseases. And so, like, I was diagnosed when I was 17. Sean was diagnosed when he was 26. But a lot of kids are diagnosed when they're like age 5. And those kids do not have as good of outcomes as we do. And that's what we're trying to change with a lot of fundraising and research and awareness, is that situation.
You know, you just on your show had a drug development series, which I want to talk to you a little bit more about. But in one of the episodes leading up to it, Kyle, you were talking about how since you were diagnosed, and I think it was 1998, that almost this entire time since you've been raising funds and driving awareness for FA. And why does it take so long for things to happen? And how, I think, Sean, you brought up on that episode on the heels of the vaccine for COVID coming out, where we see how quickly something can be developed in certain circumstances. I'm curious, after that drug development series, what did you learn that kind of helped address that question of why is it taking so long?
I think one of the main things on a broad scope is that drug development is really complicated. And at every single little point, there's so many decisions that need to be made, and heavy decisions. And it's not a cookie cutter. There's no like one way to do it. And so every single time there are decisions to be made, and those are made differently by different people. And, luckily we have some really good leaders in the rare disease community that are really helping guide the ship, but it's really complicated.
What stood out for you, Sean, from the series?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I love the way Barbara Tate explained, especially in relation to COVID, the science or the foundation for vaccines has been around for, I forget now, but a couple centuries, right? That's not new. But when you look at a rare disease and so many conditions where it's only been 10, 20, 30, 40 years that the cause or the root line cause was discovered. So, in a sense, vaccines one thing because the foundation has been around forever, but especially when you think about COVID, the entire world was tackling that issue. Whereas in the rare disease community, things have only been around for a couple decades or a few decades, and they're very niche. Not everybody's putting their best effort behind it. So what I loved about hearing the different people talk about their element of our series was how committed and passionate they are. Even though it's a lot of work and it's taking a lot of time and a lot of money, everybody is so honed in on their thing, and that gives me hope that someday we're, down the road, we're going to be centuries behind a strong foundation to where a lot of rare diseases are cured faster and in more reliable ways.
I know when I've gotten the chance to meet scientists and researchers from some of the companies working on drugs or therapies for hemophilia, there are those moments of being like, oh, you're a super nerd. I'm really glad you're into my thing because you clearly love this to an unhealthy degree. I love you. So I want you on my team every day. And those people are out there. And those behind the scenes looks, they'll introduce you to those people sometimes. What is the current state of science for FA?
So we've got a lot of clinical trials in process right now, and a lot queued up. We've had some readouts recently from clinical trials and stuff ongoing in the pipeline and stuff too. And one of the keys that's been a game changer, I think, in the last 5 years or so is that there's a ton of investment into FA research, a lot of dollars, and I think with that comes brilliant people as well, right? Like, companies hire the best people with the money they have, right? And so I think that we're building a lot of momentum with the foundation, like Sean said, that we have in basic science, and then leading into clinical and lots of effort into biomarkers and endpoints which is always the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the elusive endpoint that's going to solve everything. We've got a lot of research and thought into that. And so I think the Friedrichs Ataxia Research Alliance is very strategic. There's a plan, and that plan is always being molded. Everything is very intentional, and we've got a really strong foundation, and we're moving forward as fast as possible.
As far as the show goes, I know that in addition to the podcast, you have what I believe are called forums, where you guys, and I've seen your names on things from Global Genes at events, where you're the hosts of a symposium of sorts, or what have you. What kind of work like that have you done, and is that stuff that you're hopeful to do more of when the world has opened up a bit more?
We've done all kinds, and like you've mentioned, Global Genes was one of the most fun we've had. There was a big room, pre-COVID, there were a ton of people, and we just had some incredible participants on stage with us that just made it easy for us to, I guess, look good, if you will. So we've been able to do that a lot with pharma companies as well, and that's kind of been the more, I don't want to say more significant, but definitely significant piece, because all these scientists that you met, they're nerds, right? They hide in a closet all day, or they hide in a lab, and they rarely get to experience the patient. And what's been exciting for us, or me personally, with the forum, is being able to connect with researchers and scientists and to remind them of just how important their work is and how much we value what they bring to the table. Like you said, if they weren't on our team, we probably wouldn't have a team, right? So that's been the most significant element for me.
Yeah. I also think, we love to moderate panels with other patients, and we're able to get at the questions and the answers that the researchers and scientists and drug developers need to more quickly move their therapies forward. And so, it's real tangible value, I think, when you put patients and scientists and drug developers together and they can interface in a way like this.
So I know you guys just finished up your most recent season of the show. We mentioned the drug development series, which I think took place across the month of April, if you want to scroll back in your podcast feed. Are there any other episodes that stand out to you from the most recent season that perhaps a new listener might like to find themselves listening to?
I'm going to recommend episode 140. Our guest, her name was Shelley Bowen, and her brother deals with all kinds of issues and developmental challenges. And Shelley just sat down and had a really heartfelt conversation about her work raising and helping with her brother and the advocacy stuff that she does full time. And it was just a very heartwarming conversation with a Southern gal who was really good in front of a microphone. So just from the personal touch side of it, I recommend episode 140 from season 5.
I 100% agree with Sean. Also, at the beginning of season 5, we had quite a few conversations where it was just me and Sean. We do love to have guests, but it's also very refreshing to just have a conversation and, think of a topic that's been on our mind and just to make fun of each other and laugh about things and really solve the world's problems between the two of us.
You've done, I think, almost 150 episodes. What have you each learned about yourselves, and maybe, if you want to be so bold, about each other across those 150 episodes? Whoever would like to take that big swing first.
Well, I think, I don't know that we learned, we knew this, but I think it's become more clear that we are very different in many ways. And partly, I think that's a really good thing, because, we come to the table from different perspectives. And we really round out the whole picture with our perspectives, hopefully. But yeah.
Right now, just for fun, I'll give Kyle a hard time. We've recently have made it a known point that Kyle works better with the script, right? He prefers things to be outlined, and just recently, over the last couple weeks, we have taken the time to write scripts. But those don't seem to help either. So right now, I just don't know what Kyle needs. But I will say, on a more intimate level, for me personally, it's cliche, and people say it all the time, there's always something to learn. But I feel like that has been front and center because of the podcast. When I have a conversation with Kyle or a guest, or when we're contemplating these challenges or issues in life, I realize, or I walk away recognizing that I learned something that I had never even thought about, and I feel like those conversations and those moments have certainly enriched life for me personally.
So the show, again, is called the Two Disabled Dudes Podcast. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts. They're on social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, twodisableddudes.com. If you want to go to the website to learn more about the show, the forums that we spoke briefly about, anything that people can look forward to coming up in the fall when the new season comes out. Any plans, or does that start once the summer hits and you've actually gotten to take a break first?
Yeah, I think, we'll take a step back over the next few months and plan out the next season. But, it's always fun to figure out and to think of new things and new perspectives, new ways to approach stuff.
Well, I appreciate you both coming on very much. It's been a pleasure. As I said, I enjoy the show, so keep it up, and hopefully we'll have you on again in the future.
Thank you. This was great.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Well, thanks again to Kyle and Sean for that really enjoyable conversation. Bordo, what's sticking with you from that?
Oh, so many things. So many things. We could go on a list. But I think the first thing that stuck with me is living beyond your circumstances. And I kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit, what does that mean to you about living beyond your circumstances?
I've been thinking about that following this conversation, and we talk about how hemophilia doesn't define me, right? That's a slogan that we hear. And I have mixed feelings about that, because I feel as though that kind of attitude can be a little bit dangerous because, okay, it doesn't define you, but it is a defining characteristic of you, as are many other things, but you can't neglect this one just out of a sense of self-empowerment.
Right.
I much prefer the idea of living beyond circumstances. So it doesn't have to limit me. I can live beyond the circumstances that I'm handed medically, the circumstances of this moment. I can live in my aspirations and my imagination and my work on myself to do more, to be better. So I really like the idea of thinking about living beyond, as opposed to I'm not defined by or this thing, because it sort of forces me to first accept where I am, but then to make a decision from that place to move beyond it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about since talking to these guys about this very thing.
Yeah. I really appreciate it, because I think it is it can be, I think, for a caregiver, and I think for a patient, it can be debilitating in a way where you're stuck under a rock and you think you can't get out.
Right.
And I know that, I'm aware that there will be those times, and it kind of ebbs and flows, but it is such a worthy journey to, I think, try to get, on top of that rock and realize that, I might be standing on it, but it'll never go away. And, it might make me wobble, but, I'll start to learn more about myself. What a worthy journey.
And I will be supported if I can connect with other people who share some of this experience with me. Like my journey, my personal journey is improved if I have a connection to a community of people
Yeah.
who can relate to it, who can support me, whom I can support under the
Yeah.
right circumstances. Like it was interesting to hear Sean mention that when he and Kyle first connected, it was like, okay, what am I up against? My new best
Yes.
friend.
Yes.
And we heard not dissimilar from Avantika on last week's episode of the podcast, talking
Yes.
about why she started her rare disease podcast in
Yes.
India. It's because there wasn't something out there. And then when I asked her what she learned about it, she learned how many other people were out there like her and the connecting to them and what that meant to her.
Yes.
That theme seems pervasive across all kinds of rare diseases, the connecting to other people who share that life experience.
Yes.
And I think it's because, as you're saying, when you're on that journey, the ground will wobble underneath you. There's curves you don't know how to manage, but having other people helps.
I agree. And it bleeds into
this one.
It's like hemophilia
Where do we find them?
But it does bleed into the larger conversation of representation and really truly being able to see that across spheres, that anyone can do anything, and to connect in that way, how important, and how validating. I can't begin. I mean, we could list off a number of stories that the second that they realized that they were not alone, they weren't the only one feeling this. I mean, it's just different. And we see that at hemophilia camp. I mean, that's why hemophilia camp is so special. It's just this. I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It is undescribable how important it is to just be around kids like you for 1 week a year and to just be normal.
I may still do this, but I wanted to work on a documentary about my camp at some point that was called 5 Days and a Breakfast.
Oh.
Because for 359 days a year, as a kid, I would look forward to 5 days and a breakfast where I felt like I was at my home. And the rest of the year was life.
Yeah.
But 5 days and a breakfast, I connected with other people who got it.
We should do that.
I wouldn't mind. Oh, I can't say. I was
You
going
have
to say a
thing?
thing I can't say, but I can't say it.
Oh, I was going to say, if anyone would like to give us a lot of money to be able to do this.
Oh, yeah, we could say that. Sure. So we have we're pitching now. We're pitching at the end of the podcast.
We want to do that, and it's very important.
5 days and a breakfast. Last thing I want to touch on, because I know we're coming up on our time. And I think it was Kyle who spoke about this most explicitly, but the importance of patients being connected to the drug developers and to really all the stakeholders involved in the creation of these treatments, in the distribution of them, and the paying of them, and the managing of the patients who need them. The more we're in conversation with each other, the better. And as I was reflecting on this interview and preparing for this moment, I was thinking about what we've talked about with gene therapy over the last number of years, how as we're preparing for this moment where it is going to be a reality, and then across all disease states, it's going to exponentially just grow. It's important that all stakeholders are aligned on, okay, well, how are we rolling it out? How is it managed? What does it cost? What is the expectation? We can't work in our individual silos on these kinds of things. We need to be in the conversation together. And I think I know it's easy to say we are patient-centric, or we value the patient voice, or we put the patient at the front of what we do. And I think most companies and individuals who say that, frankly, believe it. But I would really, I guess, as a patient, I would ask all of those companies and individuals to, take a sober look under the hood at how are you pulling that through executionally? How are you pulling that through everything you're doing, making sure that the patient and the patient voice and perspective truly stay centered? Because I think if you are working on stuff in FA and you're not taking insights from people like Kyle and Sean, you're making a major mistake. So I don't know how you can actually optimize what is provided to patients if you're not doing that. And I'm not responding to like some, this isn't to say it's not happening, because I do think this is happening, and it has been happening more in the last 10 years that I've been very active in all this. But I don't think we can get complacent. We have to keep fighting for the importance of that patient voice being front and center.
And I guess I'll take it from the other side. We throw the term patient advocate around in the hemophilia and bleeding disorders community a lot, but sometimes I think almost that word, especially advocacy, we've talked about this a lot, it can get stale, and it's also like, what in the world does that mean?
What does it mean?
And I think, to remember that the only reason that there is drug development in ultra rare genetic disorders right now is because parents and patients made it happen, actually made a researcher aware that this thing even exists. So in hemophilia, we don't have that problem. We have a lot of researchers, a lot of people that are working very hard. It is their life's passion to provide treatments that will enable your chosen lifestyle, which is incredible. And it's up to us as patients and patient advocates to make sure that our voice is a part of the process. And so it's a two-way street. And sometimes I think we think of patient advocacy and, it's like we don't really do anything. And every time that you share a story, you share an anecdote, you show up to one of those ad board meetings that we've all done, all those things, you talk to somebody in the hallway at a Marriott,
Yeah.
Remember those things add up, and like those seep into people's
really do.
DNA. And so like you're doing good work, and to just continue to do that.
And I've heard explicitly about stuff that I've been, without getting into specifics, but I've been involved in some efforts that at the time felt static or unsuccessful or frustrating. And then years later, hearing from someone, hey, that thing from years ago, it came up in this recent yada yada, and now we blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, just got to appreciate that sometimes, like the long tail of change, it's not necessarily happening right away. Thank you again, Kyle, Sean. Check out the Two Disabled Dudes podcast wherever you get your podcast. Thanks as well to Josh Bragg with Let's TalkMH.com to learn more. Shout out to the Let's Talk segment sponsor, Sanofi Genzyme. Thanks as always to our presenting sponsor, Takeda, BleedingDisorders.com, for wherever on your journey you may be. And thank you to producer Greg and the Bloodstream team. Thank you for all you do. And thank you, listeners and watchers, for listening and watching.
Oh my gosh, for watching as well. And check out the program notes in your podcast player or on bloodstreammedia.com for links related to the stories and segments featured on today's episode. I doubt the coffee one will be there. But if it is, like, that would be cool. Anyway, just Google, like, New York Times coffee. And once again, I'd like to ask you to connect with us about any segment topics or guest ideas, casting opportunities, or really just about anything. Literally, you could just, like, email us at mailbag.com.
Mailbag.com.
Mailbag.com. Nope. Mailbag at bloodstreammedia.com. And literally, you can talk to us about anything. And maybe it'll make it on the show.
We've gotten, by the by, we have gotten some interesting ones of late. I don't know.
Actually, we have.
So, if you want to add to the pool of interesting emails that we're getting.
Actually, we might have a segment of like interesting emails that Patrick and Amy have gotten recently. Anyway, or you can find us on social media. We're very fun social media pals.
Very fun.
Very fun. You can connect with me on Instagram or Twitter, sometimes Facebook. You can connect with Patrick on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, it was very specifically formatted, and I just want you to know that I know that.
I know.
Okay. Well, until next time, I'm your host, Patrick James Lynch.
And I am your other host, Amy Board.
We will be back again on July 9th. Mark your calendar, summer schedule. You know how it is, July 9th. And until then, take self-care of yourself. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.